Coming into the second and third rounds of your fantasy basketball drafts, there's a ton of available talent, Dan. And it's like when you go into these rounds, you're going to have a lot of dilemmas because these players are now the secondary part of your build. How are you going to build your team and what pieces are complementary, or can you find more superstars? Throughout this entire second, third round, you're getting a lot of superstar talent that either comes with risk or maybe a change in situation, or maybe they're on the down path or ascension in their career. So it's like in the second round, how are you cultivating your teams? Because I know for me personally, like I'm looking at who did I draft in the first round, and I either want to like absolutely correlate with that to build strengths, or I want to kind of fade that so we balance the teams out. Like, what's your strategy heading into the second, third round?
Yeah, you got to know. I mean, you have to base this off of who you go with in the first round, and there's a lot of different ways you can go. I think that there's definitely some value on guards. Like if you went with a big man in the first round, there's going to be tons of first, all NBA type point guards waiting there for you. This is like the beauty of the second round is where I feel like those younger players that may have been overdrafted, that's when the value falls for the older guys. So people like Damian Lillard, a guy that's coming off a bad year, but a bad year for Dame is still a second round player. So I'm saying, so if Dame plays, he's going through this new offseason full-time under Doc Rivers. He's not going through the contractual trade stuff he was going on. He had stuff going on in his personal life. We could see that Damian Lillard of old. And if you're getting him in the back of the second round, I mean, that's easy value right there. So I think we can talk about a few different guys that I think kind of fit that, buy back, rebound kind of territory that kind of just got pushed to the back of the second round and maybe even the third round, like LeBron James.
Yeah, and if you missed it already, we talked about some guys that we thought even had first round value here in the second round. Cat and Chet Holmgren are guys that maybe you don't have to draft them there, but have the ceiling of being like top 12 at their position. So if you missed that video, go on and check it out. But let's talk about some other players that are some underrated gems here in the second round. You and I were actually just kind of talking off camera about a couple guys here in the second round. And I mean, when you look at it, the star power is there. You got Kevin Durant's the type of name that goes here. Karl Anthony Towns, your Kyrie Irvings. You got LeBron and Damian Lillard here in the second round. Where do you think where like drafters can find some value? Who do you think is a person that is probably undervalued here in this range?
I think it's Kevin Durant. And, I think Durant, last year he was going in the first round. He's been a perennial first round pick whenever he's been healthy. The one knock, so I'm guilty of it myself. Like I pushed Kevin Durant to like a mid-second round. And it's really because we haven't seen what this big three of, him, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal can really look like, because Bradley Beal was hurt for most of the season last year. He only played 50 games. And so right now, who's that usage? If they're all healthy, who's going to like lose some of that usage? The good thing about Durant is he's one of the most efficient shooters we got in the game. And I think the better part that we're kind of sleeping on with the Suns in general is what it means when Coach Budenholzer is there now as their head coach. When Mike Budenholzer was with the Milwaukee Bucks, the starters don't play crazy minutes, but they shoot way more threes. They play this 5-out system where, I think you're going to see this offensive pace pick up. The possessions are going to pick up. That's all going to bode well for Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. So if you're getting Kevin Durant at 27 a night, 7-8 rebounds, 5 assists, good shooting splits, and he's a good defender in the mid-second, that's value.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, KD and this team is probably going to be better than we're giving him credit for with Bradley Beal being able. I know Bradley Beal ain't great, but at least him playing an entire season this year.
He's an efficient basketball player when he's healthy, right?
Yes, and that's the key to it all. And they feed off of each other. And when the energy level for this Suns team is there, they also picked up, obviously, Tyus Jones here in the offseason. Like, that's going to be a facilitator that can get the ball out to these playmakers a little easier. So I'm with you there. I like Kevin Durant, and I think he's always got the star power, too. So when he goes on a hot streak, if you're ever needing a different piece, you could always trade him because of the name value. But a standalone value, I mean, you're going to get great field goal, free throw percentage. He's not really a big turnover guy. Occasionally will go on a streak where he has a bunch of blocks. So he's been a surprisingly good defensive guy over the course of his career. He doesn't get a lot of credit for that, especially in fantasy. He'll get like damn near a steal and a block a game. So I like Kevin Durant. I think he's he's good value there. A piece that I'm looking at, though, Dan, provides a little versatility. The one thing is Scotty Barnes for Toronto. He's underrated for a reason because he doesn't really do anything great. That's the one thing I'll say about him is that you can't use him as an anchor on your team. But for somebody who fills the stat sheet, I mean, he shoots decent from the field, decent from the line, will get you good rebounds, good assists, good points. He steals and blocks defensive cats, and he won't hurt you on turnovers. He's a good filler piece that has great positional eligibility. He can play shooting guard, small forward, and power forward. So as you're building your lineup, if you decide I'm going to go guard heavy, you can focus on the guard aspects and let him play a little bit bigger. If you want to put him at the guard spot and you want to focus on building a heavier team, you can do that as well. So I think, and especially this year, this team's going to rely on him pretty heavily throughout the year. Obviously, you got your RJ Barrett, your Emmanuel Quickly, but like this is a piece, the centerpiece of this team. So if he does take an increase in scoring, an increase in just usage overall, I think Scotty Barnes has a lot of potential here. And in the second round, it just provides you a little bit of fluidity with your roster.
A couple concerns I have about Scotty. I think he is a good pick. And I think especially if you're looking for stocks in the second round, I think he's, head above most of the competition in terms of like being able to, get steals and blocks, but he doesn't really shoot threes particularly well. And the short sample size that we did get to see of Scotty, RJ, and Emmanuel Quickly, I know a guy that you're not really a fan of, but I love. Scotty actually had the least amount of field goal attempts when those three were healthy. So I don't know if that's an early trend that we didn't get enough data on, but it's one thing that I will be monitoring, at least as the season kind of gets on. But I think that, Scotty Barnes is definitely an all-star caliber player. He's a jack of all trades, minus the threes and a middling free throw percentage. He pretty much does everything else. He doesn't turn over the ball a lot. He's just one of those Swiss Army knife type guys. So I think you can, with the right build, if you pair him with like, say, a Giannis Antetokounmpo, that's a really nice stat stuffing team to kind of start your build, because he's not going to, Giannis, we already talked about how bad he is in terms of free throw percentage. You can kind of lean into that, but then you can just build out all these other categorical stats across the board. So Scotty's one of those people that you can just kind of plug and play and not really have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the things that it makes a player undervalued or overvalued is how you build your team, because you're going to value something a little bit more if you draft that way, right? Like if you draft to have assists, if you draft to have bigs, you're going to value the points more or the threes more. So I think the reason why I like Scotty Barnes, and you made some good points there. So it's like you have to kind of look at what they did in the second half. But I think this is a piece that doesn't hurt you. And he might slip in your draft for some of the other names. So I think if you're at the back end of the second round and he's available, you can get a guy like Scotty Barnes. Anybody else here in the second round who you feel is like undervalued, Dan? Because there's some other pieces here in the second round that offer very good upside. Like I would say really good upside. And there's a chance that even some of the first round guys might drop and push down some of the players that are here in the second round.
Yeah, for sake of not trying to sound like I'm glazing the Sixers too much, I'll reserve my speech for Paul George and why I think he should be, an early second round pick too, or mid second round pick.
He should, by the way.
He should. I'm not going to do it. Damian Lillard, the worst finish he's had in, his entire career was like 49th. That was 3 years ago. Last year, as bad as he was, shooting efficiency wise, he still finished 25th in 9-cat leagues. Man. So I feel like maybe fantasy managers are drafting him to his floor right now rather than his ceiling. And I think that's kind of where that price is getting baked in. He's not a late second round pick. It's Damian Lillard. He's not that old. What is he, turning 34 this year?
Yeah.
People aren't scared to draft James Harden, first overall or first round. So Steph Curry, same thing. I think we're writing off Damian Lillard a little bit too quickly here. He's among the league leaders in threes every year. He's probably going to average close to 7 assists. I think being with Doc Rivers, he always likes to play his vets a lot of minutes, and they're also going to play through Dame and Giannis. So I feel like there's just not much downside to reinvesting in Damian Lillard in a bounce back. Right now he's going to I think his ADP is 25. So that's almost that's a third round. He's someone that could go around those times of Jalen Brunson, Paul George, Kevin Durant. Like he's of that caliber. So I think right now he's a good buyback, you know what I'm saying, on a time that he can actually spend time in the offseason, get right, and come to this season ready to go.
And we talked about this last season. For those who don't know, my boy Dan over there with Yahoo, we had a podcast and we talked about how Doc typically leans into his superstars. We didn't get to see the efficiency and the effectiveness of Dame that we thought we did. He still played well, but I think we were all expecting a little bit more from him. This is a good time, like you mentioned, kind of to bounce back and to get him at the cost you are. you probably drafted Jokic, Wemby, Shea. You already have your anchor. Now you're getting Lillard too here in the back of the second. It's like that's free money. So I think you're getting Steph Curry, LaMelo Ball type talent, just picks after that. And so to me, this is it, it's going to be one of the steals of the draft. Like I just think that at worst, you talked about he was the 25th ranked player last year.
Yeah,
he can only get better. Like I'm with you on that.
It just can't get too much worse than that. You're right. Like Milwaukee is definitely clearly signaling that they're trying to go for this chip. Like they know that window is inevitably closing. You get Gary Trent, DeLon Wright. You know what I'm saying? Like they're building a roster here. So I think Dame's gonna be way, way better this year.
I'm just like that actually used to be one of my favorite builds was to try to get like Steph Curry in Steph Curry and Dame. So, I used to try to get Steph and Dame for the threes. You know what I'm saying? Like I always try to get those percentage. Exactly. Great field goal percentage. And both of them, honestly, are some of the best rebounding point guards that there are. Some of you know what I mean? Like obviously not Luka-ish, but like for like a sneaky five, like
to that point though. Kyrie Irving is another one that's kind of sliding in the second round, that a great rebounding guard, also a good defensive guard, and he can shoot 50, 40, 90. So you're talking about efficiency. There's no like Kyrie Irving, if it wasn't for his stigma outside the league, like he would be closer to that early second round pick. He should be. What have we seen that is not proven that he's an elite fantasy player other than his availability?
I think that's it, because on a per game basis, normally Kyrie is around a top 12 player on a per game basis almost every single year. So it really does come down to availability. And I know the concern was like when he goes to Dallas, what's he going to look like? But Luka misses time, and he's still, because of his efficiency, a lot of times he's able to carry his value. So I don't know how these point guards slip all the way here. And I think, when I think about players like Sabonis, like I'm just not excited about taking Sabonis because the same reasons we talked about with Giannis, there's just categories where he does not help you. You're not getting great defensive cats. You're not getting threes for the most part. You're not getting great free throw percentage. So I don't know. I feel like in this second round, when you could find such good talent there at the back end when it comes to point guards, there's a lot of sneaky value with those guys, especially some of these fallen names.